in the Hachaim in this week's Parshat, Parshat Acharei. So we're going to start towards the middle. But our Hachaim goes into depth and gives different explanations as to what was the reason. As we know, in this week's Parsha, it discusses the death of Nadav and Avihu. Even though it happened before, which our Hachaim goes into why we discuss it now, but our Hachaim now goes into length with different explanations or different reasons why Nadav and Avihu were taken away from us when they went into the Mishkan. Mashe Diyanu HaKasav. So I don't know if you have an insight, but if you have an insight, it's about a quarter of the way through the first pasuk in the parsha. It's a longer Hachaim, so it begins. We have to understand, based on what the Torah already told us, that because of the egel that Aaron, which we'll discuss in a second, was involved with, even though he was not directly involved with, but because of that Avera, Aaron HaKohen's two sons passed away. Now what happened was, just to refresh ourselves, when Moshe Rabbeinu didn't come down, the Yidden panicked and they ran to Aaron HaKohen, what should we do? And he told them, go bring the jewelry and go bring this, and we're going to make the egel. Now obviously his intention was completely to delay Klal Yisrael, so hoping that by the time they would collect the jewelry and they collect all the different things necessary, Moshe Rabbeinu would already be back. To his surprise, they actually came back right away, as because either they used their own jewelry or they took what the jewelry and the gold from their wives, and unfortunately, as we know, the egel came about. Now, even though in Vayakel Pekudei Hakadosh Baruch Hu told Aaron HaKohen that he forgave him, but still at that time, Hashem said that because of this Aveira, this is what's going to happen. And we're just reading, again, we can't understand, because for us, Aaron HaKohen really didn't do anything, and there's different pshatim, what Aaron HaKohen was afraid of. One very famous pshat that's brought down in the Svarim was that Aaron was concerned that if he wouldn't do something, they would actually kill him. And he was afraid. I'm sorry? Yeah. Right, so as you said, Simcha, there are many different reasons and many different cheshbonos what Aaron HaKohen had in mind. The basic pshat was that Aaron HaKohen understood that he couldn't tell them no, so he came up with a way that he hoped would delay the implementation of what they wanted to do, and hoping by the time they were able to put everything together, Moshe Rabbeinu would have come. Other pshatim was that based on the same idea, but Aaron HaKohen understood that if he did not give in to them, they would kill him. And to kill a Kohen Gadol would almost be impossible to be mechaper. And he understood that by the kapara of the Cheta Egel, there would be some sort of way to be mechaper. Even though he was the one that was the main giver of the kapara, but he felt that unfortunately was the lesser of two evils. Again, there's other pshatim like you mentioned before, Simcha, and he wasn't the Kohen Gadol yet, but he was already told that he will be the Kohen Gadol. So he wasn't anointed, as Simcha is asking, at the time of the Cheta Egel, Aaron HaKohen was not officially anointed yet as the Kohen Gadol, but he was already told that he would be the Kohen Gadol. Okay? I don't know if it was made, I don't remember if it was made public yet or not, but definitely he knew that he would be the Kohen Gadol, because if you remember by the sneh, when Moshe Rabbeinu told Hakadosh Baruch Hu that he couldn't go to Parshat because he couldn't speak, he wasn't sure, so Hakadosh Baruch Hu said, your brother Aaron will go with you, and then all the Mefarshim say at that point is when Moshe Rabbeinu lost to Kahuna. But either way, let's continue, and again, we're going to start again, based on what the Psukim already taught us. The Ksiv, it says in Devarim, Aaron his anef Hashem moed. Hakadosh Baruch Hu became very angry with Aaron. Again, if it wasn't written in the Torah, we wouldn't be able to say this. Lahashmidor. Moshe Rabbeinu is saying to Klal Yisrael that because of what you did with the Cheta Egel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was so angry with Aaron that he was prepared to kill all 4 of his sons. The Espalel, and Moshe Rabbeinu tells Klal Yisrael that I daven to Hashem. Upirshu Rabbeinu, and Rabbeinu, the Chachamim, explained Lahashmidoi, that what was the words Lahashmidoi referring to? It was referring to Zeh Misa Sabonim. Like we just mentioned, that the punishment that Aaron was going to have was the death of all his 4 sons. And who would take over? Mistama, one of his grandsons. Pinchas would become the Kohen Gadol, or somebody else, but none of his sons directly would become the Kohen Gadol. Now, Va'ila hatfila shal Moshe nechza, and Moshe davened that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have Rachmanis on Aaron's children, and it helped halfway. It helped that only 2 of Aaron's 4 sons were killed. And also that is the famous principle of Tefillah Oisa Mechza, that Tefillah does half. Why? Because Moshe Rabbeinu davened HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have Rachmanis and spare Aaron and his family, and only 2 of his 4 sons were spared, not the other one. Allah Marata, so we come out from this psukim, Ki Shnei Bnei Aaron Ba'avala Egel Mesu, that they died because of the sin of the Egel, the golden calf. Now we should know one other important principle, that the Avera of the Egel was so great for a variety of different reasons that Hashem could not, or would not, I should say, punish Klal Yisrael at once for the Chet Egel. We today, we're still paying the price for the Chet Egel. When Chas v'Shalom someone, falls down, he was only supposed to get 90% of that pain. An extra 10% of that pain when he fell down, he banged his knee, he lost $100. That extra 10% that's added is still his portion of the Chet Egel. So you see how long we're still paying for this Chet Egel, which is an unbelievable thing. So the Hachaim continues. Now, the Hachaim is preempting a very famous question. V'loi taksha, we already said that we all know that the reason that Nadav and Avihu died was because they came into the Kodesh Hakadoshim improperly. They drank wine, they were maktik taris when they shouldn't have. So you see, the reason that they died was not because of the Oven Ego, was because they did something wrong. They did an Aveira. And because they did in Hakrava, which means they were makar of the Ketairas, so either way, it seems to be that was the cause of their Aveira, not because of the Chet Egel. So the Chaim teaches us an unbelievable yisoid. She'im yeshloima, that yeshloima, you have to say, she'im lahoya avon avim, that if their father Aaron would not have did an Aveira, so Hashem hoyeshoyme ragal chasidav, Hashem would have saved them from doing this Aveira. Because we have a rule that HaKadosh Baruch Hu usually protects tzaddikim from doing an Aveira. But because there was this Aveira over them, that Shmira, that Siyata Deshmai that usually accompanies tzaddikim, right? We all know famous stories that a tzaddik is about to eat a food that's not kosher, that's treif, that Chumas and Meister wasn't taken off. The last minute he gets a phone call, somebody comes. The famous story with the Vilna Gaon, that as he was about to eat, the candle fell into his chicken, and different things, to save them from doing different averas. That is a special shmira that accompanies the tzaddik. Befrat, when he is very careful of a certain avera, a certain mitzvah to do, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to cause him to fall in that mitzvah. So here too, the Hachaim says that really Nadav and Avihu could have been protected, but because Aaron HaKohen did this avera, the shmira, the protection, the siyat, the shmai that would have accompanied Nadav and Avihu, how would it have happened? Moshe would have caught them right before they went in. He would have stopped them. Something would have happened that would have prevented them from either going improperly into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, or from improperly being maktik Torahs. But because of this Aveira, there no more was this protection to protect them. Now, and if they wouldn't have died, still HaKadosh Baruch Hu would have had to be Mekadosh the Mishkan in a different way, as Chaim brings down in a different piece, in this Parshat I believe, and it's brought down in other places. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu, when I'm going to build a Mishkan, I'm going to bring a carbon, which meant that a tzaddik is going to die. He ended up being Nadav and Avihu. Moshe originally thought it was him and Aaron. One of them would have died. But then, when Nadav and Avihu died, he actually told Aaron that I now see that Nadav and Avihu were greater than me and you. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, B'kdoshai, I'm going to be Mekadosh through my holy ones, I'm going to be Mekadosh the Mishkan. So now when Nadav and Avihu died, he understood that who is Kaddish in Hashem's eye? Nadav and Avihu. So the only reason that they died was because of the Avon Ha'egel, because of the sin of the golden calf. Because if there was no sin of the golden calf, then Hashem would have made sure they did not do this Aveira of either going to the Kodesh Kedoshim when they shouldn't have, or to be Makdir the Ktaris, according to the other opinion, and a different tzaddik would have died. And the Acharei adds a very important point that you should know, that Shagam, Sheyachpoetz Hashem HaMosel HaChasidov, that we know, for some reason, that Kodesh Baruch Hu wants the death of those that He loves. Liyadeh Telumis Niflam V'Ramis. Only those that know the secrets of Hashem. And it's very ironic that the Hachaim himself writes these words, because the famous story with the Hachaim Hakadosh, that we know the Hachaim Hakadosh died very young. And one of the reasons that's brought down is that he davened that Kodesh Baruch Hu should bring Mashiach, and in Shemayim they granted his request. Now obviously the Yetzirah, the Tzaratuma, the Sitra Achra was not happy, because that means that they're finished, they're over, and they were able to bring a tremendous kitrug on Klal Yisrael, that there was a terrible decree on Klal Yisrael. And when the Hachaim found out about this, he davened to the point that he gave up his life in order to be mevatel the gzeira. And that's actually what he told his Talmidim, that this would be his last year on earth. And he died young. So these words that he writes over here, that tzaddikim die young, even though we would seem that for us, the longer the tzaddik lives, the better it is, but there's certain secrets and certain reasons that only Hashem knows why He wants the misa of those that are very dear to Him. Now, even still, Hashem will not take a pure tzaddik. The tzaddik that He takes has to have some shemetz of psul. He has to do something wrong, right? And Memela, so here, Nadav and Avihu, who were actually the greatest tzaddikim in those days, the only thing that they had wrong against them was the sin of their father. And Memela, that was the thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was able to use, as the Hachaim writes, because we couldn't say this otherwise, Tzarech she'atzadik kol shu mi'advarim asher lo yitov asos. Kidei shederech Sham Yishloit Bemadin. Why? Because if the Midas Adin in Shemayim said Nadav and Avihu should die, and they were perfect, so the Midas Adin itself and Midas Arachman say, where's the justice? There's no reason that they should die. They didn't do anything wrong. So Memela, in order for them to have died, there had to be even a 0.1 trillionth percent of something that they can say, as the Hachaim writes, that the Yitzhar Adin can have shlita on them, and I already was ma'arich on this prat at a different place, this idea that in order for the Midas HaMishpat, in order to be able to execute din on somebody, there has to be something bad, or whatever, even if it's a little bit, that it can be able to prosecute that individual. That's why to tshuva is always very important, and a person always has to be very careful. Say lamad, mimashematz Rabbi Akiva tam larigosai. So the Hachaim brings a famous story with Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was perfect. There was nobody greater than Rabbi Akiva, to the point that when Moshe Rabbeinu came up to Shemayim, and he saw in a vision a big yeshiva, and at the head of the yeshiva was Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva was privy to many secrets that even Moshe Rabbeinu said, why are you giving the Torah through me? You should give the Torah through Rabbi Akiva. As we know, the Torah Shabbat Peh is all through Rabbi Akiva. So if that's the case, how did he have such a terrible death? He explained, because he once had a little bit, a mashahu of simcha, when he said Torah in front of 600,000 people. Now, for us to understand that is the reason that Rabbi Akiva attributed his terrible misa to, is an unbelievable thing. But I guess that is something, a little bit that a tzaddik has. We can understand it. We can relate to it. What did he do? He did wrong. He was a little happy that he said Torah in front of 600,000 people. So we see from here, our Hachaim brings this concept that in order for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to execute judgment, there has to be something. Obviously, on the level of Rabbi Akiva, for that little thing is something, right? Maybe it's a good thing, but Simcha is asking, Lamaisa, what's wrong with being happy, right? Being besimcha, no pun intended, by saying a drush in front of 600,000 people. So it could be that, I'm sorry? Maybe it was a little bit, again, we cannot relate to this. How can you say that Rabbi Akiva, who was perfect, who was everything, L'Shem Shemayim, L'Kavod Shemayim, that he died, Al Kiddush Hashem, had some sort of pniyah, some sort of interest. But I guess for his level, this one gazillionth level of point of pniyah, of a interest, was enough. The Kashal is in the Acharei himself says it's very difficult to understand because of this. Yischag Enosh Misa Mishana. Forget about a regular death, a unusual, a terrible death like this. In Cain, Poka Kalila Dardohi Mikol Oisei Tev. If that's the case, right, then every person will get punished, right? And like you said, everybody feels good when they do a good mitzvah, says the Acharei. So, how's that? Nobody could live, right? And we know the famous saying in the Torah that the Torah was not given to malachim. We're not malachim. So it's normal. A person does a mitzvah, he learns Torah, he goes to a good shir, he feels good afterward. Ella, rather, the Acharei says on the contrary, this is the proof. This is where the din can attach itself. But the real truth is that the death that's not the reason. Which means that in order for Hashem to be able to have did what he did to Rabbi Akiva, he had to find something to do it. Which means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, for whatever reason, the misa of the tzaddikim. As the Acharei explains now, Yokar be'einei Hashem ha'matzal asar ruge malchus. The misa of the asar ruge malchus was so valuable in the eyes of Hashem, right? And he'll explain in a second why, that he still had to find a reason in order to execute the judgment. Without it, he couldn't execute the judgment. And therefore, what is the reason? So we know the famous saying that's said many times. We say it on Yom Kippur, we say it on Tisha B'Av, Lamogen Litzino L'Doris B'nai Yisrael, the death of the Acharei Ruge Malchus was something that is used constantly for protection, to generate Rachmim on Klal Yisrael. Like the Akedah, every time we mention the Akedah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has Rachmanis. Every time we mention the death of the Acharei Malchus on Yom Kippur, on Tisha B'Av, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is machshid as you will makriv a carbon. And we'll end off on this prat. We know that discussing the misa of a tzaddik, and also when a person feels terrible that a tzaddik dies, it actually serves for him a tremendous kapara, a tremendous nikoi of a din. And if a person has a gzar din on him, if he be'emes feels sad on a tzaddik, whether the tzaddik is 100, whether the tzaddik is 30 or 50, and the mamish feels a terrible loss for Klal Yisrael, for Hashem. Remember, every Talmid Chacham, every tzaddik that learns, brings Kavod Shemayim in this world. He is expanding the elokus, godliness in this world when he learns Torah and does mitzvahs, and that loss is actually a loss to Hashem, not just to us. So when a person mamish feels that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is losing, Klal Yisrael is losing, the Shekhinah is losing because of the death of a tzaddik, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not only mechaper the individual, he's also mevatel en gzar din. And this is another important inyan as we're learning about Nadav and Avihu, that the Misa was obviously for us a terrible loss, because if Moshe Rabbeinu said that Nadav and Avihu were greater than Aaron and himself, imagine what we lost out. Imagine what we could have had, and what HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have had, the Torah that they could have revealed in this world. And we're going to actually learn in Parshat Pinchas and Mitzvah Hashem that when Pinchas did the tremendous mitzvah that he did, the neshamas of Nadav and Avihu became infused in his neshama. So he actually now went from having the neshama of Pinchas to, in addition, having the neshama of Nadav and Avihu, and eventually, Pinchas, besides all the good things that he did throughout the generations, according to most Mefarshim, he became Eliyahu Hanavi, not just Eliyahu Hanavi in Malachim, but Eliyahu Hanavi that we have today, that actually is going to be the one that's going to bring the ultimate Desura of Mashiach. So you see what koiches were lying in Nadav and Avihu, that the Mashiach somehow, or at least the coming of the Mashiach, is lying in them. And the learning that we do should be a schus for us, and it should be a kapara for us and for all Klal Yisrael.